Hey everybody, Brian Wise here. It's been a day or two since I've made a video, so I had a little downtime, believe it or not. So I thought I would sit down and just kind of bring you up to speed. So I don't know if this was in my last video or not, but you can see I've actually got some of my soaps displayed. I did add these today. I've actually boxed these up. I'm taking these to market on Sunday. I'm now doing a market in Manitou Springs, and I did my first Manitou Springs market this past Sunday. And not much of a difference between that market and the other markets that I've done, but I will tell you, I did it by myself and it was quite an undertaking. And the market actually was from 12:30 until 7 p.m. Um, 2 to 7 open, but you get to set up as early as 12:30. And of course, I got there at 11:30 and it made for a very long day. When I got in that night, it was about 7:30. I was just exhausted, and because I was going to be gone for over half of the day, I had gotten the dog sitter to come in and tend to Sam Jones because that was I felt like a long time for her to be by herself. But anyway, the Manitou Market, I deemed it a success. I did quite well in terms of sales. It really wasn't any bigger than the Pine Creek Market. And although I wasn't disappointed, I was a little bit surprised because Manitou Springs, if you don't know, is very much a tourist town. And it's a small little town. And it's right on the outskirts of Colorado Springs. I could probably get there in 10 minutes if I had to. It literally is there. But there is a lot of foot traffic and this, that, and the other. So I thought that I would do a lot better than I actually did. Um, but that's okay. That's okay because what I did sell, I was pleased with. Of course, it could always be better, right? So I'm doing that. But there's a couple of things that I noticed about these farmers markets. One is food products literally walk out of there. I mean, practically on their own. People are loving the food, bread, bagels, cookies, things like that. Produce. A lot of the people there, which you would imagine would be at a farmer's market, are bringing in their tomatoes and onions and whatnots from their gardens, which I'm always puzzled. Like, how did you grow all of that in Colorado? I tried to grow some jalapeno peppers once at the cabin out on the deck, and if you consider the amount of water that I had to pour on each plant that yielded very small peppers, I figured each pepper probably cost about 20 or 30 bucks a piece, considering the amount of water that I put on those things. So it just wasn't worth it for me. And then, of course, you can grow a jalapeno pepper in the South, and it's practically the size of a small banana. However, but these people they have greenhouses, and so they're able to control evaporation and water and heat and the sun. The sun in Colorado is brutal because of the elevation. So while it's not hot like it is in South Louisiana hot, it's warm, but it's not humid. Of course, it's a different kind of hot, as we say, but you will burn fairly quickly here because of the elevation. But back to the original point. So that's what I've noticed about these farmers market is the food stuff. So I got the bright idea that I would try to venture into the food market here. So I actually they're considered cottage foods, and basically cottage foods are things that's not going to go bad if you sell them if they set out at a farmer's market, say like a loaf of bread. You're not going to set out, say, mayonnaise, for example, things that tend to go bad or rancid or spoil, fairly quickly. Those things you are not farmers market kind of things, and they require a different kind of certification in order for you to be able to serve that to the public. So cottage food, it's a food handler certification out of 10, 15 bucks. It's an online course and you're good to go. I did make some chocolate chip cookies the other night and they were absolutely wonderful. They were huge and fluffy and chocolatey. I kind of altered the recipe a little bit. Instead of using milk chocolate, I used 80% cacao chocolate chips and then an 85% cacao chocolate bar that I grated to add into the mix. And it makes this huge bowl of dough. In fact, it makes so much dough that I can only typically cook about half and I had to put the other half in the refrigerator because you're just baking cookies all day. And what are you going to do with that many cookies? But I thought, golly, I could sell these things at the farmer's market. And of course, bread. I could do cinnamon rolls minus maybe the frosting. I think I could even do frosting as long as it's not buttercream, sour cream, because again, those things typically require some kind of refrigeration. So last night I made 4 loaves of bread, and I guess some lessons are worth relearning because I already knew this from my soap making experience when I did the liquid soap. And if you didn't see my other video, I don't have it up here. I took it downstairs earlier to do some labeling, but I actually have my bottles of liquid soap bottled up. And I'm working on labels now, ready to go for Sunday. Again, I'm doing the Sunday market in Manitou this Sunday. In fact, I'm doing it every Sunday until September. And then there's a week in September that I'm going to take off because I'm actually going to Ireland for a few days, and I am so looking forward to that. But again, so I've learned my lesson. I can't batch that much stuff at one time. It's a lot to manage. And then secondly, I just don't have the equipment for it. So I have my mixer. It's a KitchenAid stand mixer, and I'm putting in, they called for 16 cups of flour, and I knew that the mixer could not accommodate that. So I did 8 cups of flour in the first 2 loaves. It made 4 loaves total. But my liquid, I did all at one time. I was going to take half and then use the other half of the other 2 loaves. But what I failed to realize is that when I got ready to do the second batch, the remaining 2 loaves and the remaining liquid, that kept the lion's share of the butter, which the recipe called for butter, which I've never done that before, and I'm not a fan of it, and I'm going to tell you why. But anyway, so my loaves turned out gorgeous. The first 2 loaves kind of deflated a little bit. I proofed them in the oven, took them out on that last rise, and bumped the oven up to 400 degrees. And of course, the time it took for the oven to get up to 400, my bread kind of deflated a little bit. And I thought, well, it'll come back, with the heat, but it didn't because the oven at that time was really high. So it cooked fairly quickly. So the bread didn't have time to inflate again. So that's a lesson learned. Proof elsewhere only, and then when your bread has risen, take the risen bread and immediately pop it into a hot oven. And at higher altitudes, bump your temp up 10, 15, 20 degrees, and maybe your cook time, decrease that a few minutes as well. You just don't need that. That's what I did with this last batch of cookies, and they turned out beautifully. I did a batch a while back, and they were flattened. They were delicious, and they were chewy. If you like chewy, gooey kind of cookies, you would have loved these. But I wanted a fluffier looking cookie. So what I discovered is raising the oven temp, and shortening the cooking time actually yields a higher mound in the cookie, a higher rise, whatever, a higher fluff, as I call it, in the bread. And I did a Tuscan bread, so it had oregano and parsley, basil. I did Parmesan cheese on top, and then I also just threw in some poppy seeds just for fun. And so it was really beautiful. But when I bagged it, it left grease spots on my paper bags. And that was disappointing. And it was that doggone butter. But I think that was my fault because I split and I didn't take into account that the butter was going to basically saponify in half of the remaining half of my liquid. So that's a lesson I learned as well. I did some labels for my bread, and I put that on there, and I did an ingredient label, all the things that Colorado requires for cottage foods. And I could so do it, and again, it just kind of leads me back to, I wish I had like a brick and mortar building. Because I want to because I think I've mastered candles, I've mastered bar soap, and I've mastered liquid soap. And when I say master, trust me, well, I don't know, maybe you could. I couldn't just go in there day one, make a batch of soap, and it turned out beautifully. It's all, again, if you watched my other videos, it doesn't matter how many times you watch a YouTube video or how many different videos you watch, there's not going to be the subtle nuances in those videos. People just, I'll watch this one video and I'm thinking finally, step by step, second by second countdown of how this girl is making this soap. But she never once said what the crock pot should be set on at any particular point. So do you start off warm, medium, And so I learned now you start off high and then you turn it down to not low but to warm. So there is a learning curve. But golly, a storefront would be amazing. And I don't know that the economy is, I don't know that much about the economy. I do know that things are expensive. Recessions loom, this, that, and the other. And it's not anybody's fault. I don't care what Republicans say. It just, the economy cycles. It's been cycling as far back as I can remember, so there are things that influences, I suppose, but so the point being, I'm not sure if right now would be a great time for me to open up a brick and mortar store. And my husband is said to retire in a few months. He's actually given his notice, so we'll see. Because I've heard that before, but we'll see. And but if it turns out that he actually does retire, then I do want to travel extensively. We have this gorgeous Wind Sprinter Storyteller RV in the driveway, and we've only used it 2 or 3 times. Would like to take that out, just hit the open road and go. And then I would like to spend more time overseas. We've actually thought about looking, renting a place, say in Scotland, for example, just for an entire summer, just to see if it's something that we actually would like to do. And then if it's something that we thoroughly enjoy, then maybe even buy a place in Scotland or in Ireland, something like that. I don't know, pipe dreams, but life is short, right? So there you go. I don't really have a whole lot to report. I've labeled a lot of my soaps today, as you can see in boxes. I put some with a cigar band around the soaps, and that seems to be okay, but I don't know. These farmers markets, they typically are in some field somewhere and it's dusty, and your stuff gets coated with this fine layer. So I'm just liking the boxes better. Another thing I've learned too, man, my first market, I'm hauling 15 of every cent, and I had 18 cents candles up there. And oh my Lord, it's not only is it overwhelming for me trying to set this stuff up and arrange it. So I've got a 4-foot table, an 8-foot table, and a 4-foot table. And a lot of people have the 8 feet like a U, so you walk into it. I kind of do the opposite. So I'm inside and you walk on the perimeter. But setup is not what you're here to I don't know why you're here other than entertainment maybe. And maybe you'll learn some things if you decide to go down that farmer's market road. But I'm cutting back. I'm not taking that many vessels of candles. So, for example, blue spruce. Nobody's going to come up there and buy 15 jars or vessels of blue spruce. So I am going to probably take 6, right? Maybe 3. Blue spruce does sell pretty well though, so maybe I'll take 6, and the amber plum, maybe I'll take 3 because that doesn't sell nearly as well. So we'll see. So there you go. I've made the bread, and while I'm not going to try to sell the bread right now, nor am I going to eat the bread because I just don't eat bread these days. And I'm down under 200 pounds, I'm proud to say. And it's strictly 86 in the sugar, 86 in alcohol. Golly, I mean, I used to love to drink, and I used to love coffee with sweetener and creams and flavors, and I haven't had that in well over a year. And alcohol, once in a blue moon, if we go out to eat, I will get a Cosmopolitan because I just love a Cosmopolitan. Typically, we'll go out to like a martini bar, a speakeasy. We found a couple here in Colorado Springs that we like a lot. So we'll go there and we'll have a couple of cocktails, and then we'll go to dinner, and then we'll come home and we call it a night. Nothing like the good old days, right? But anyway, all of that aside, things are going good. I've got lots of products. I'm introducing 6 new hand soaps at market on Sunday. I'm introducing 6 new bar soaps at market on Sunday, in addition to my candles that you see behind me. Um, Financially, I'm doing way better than I ever thought that I would. So that's a good thing. Anyway, that's all for this video. I hope you guys are having a good time. Stay safe out there. And remember, just kind of, if you're not sure what to do, like I always say, just soak it up and see what comes out of it. Anyway, ciao. You guys have a blessed evening and a beautiful day.